Intuitive viewers, welcome to Let's Chat on Sunday. I am so excited to be here with you on Easter Sunday, and I have a wonderful guest today named Adam Free. He is from Stargazing Astrology, and Adam, welcome to the channel.
Kim, thanks for so much for having me on. I know we've been chatting for a while, and it's great to be on this beautiful Easter Sunday.
It is. It's really fun. And by the way, I did tell Adam I realized it was Easter, and he graciously still came and said, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." So we are here, and so happy to be chatting today with all of you. And we will be talking about astrology today. And so I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
Adam, as I've kind of looked at your background, and so the first question I had for you is that on your channel, it says that you are psychic. And so I just wonder if that is where this all started for you. Was kind of, were you always psychic? Is this where is this the origins of your moving into astrology and that kind of thing?
That's actually a wonderful question. So what I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to refer to me being psychic in relation to astrology. And the reason why I need to do that is because my sun sign is Virgo, and Virgos need kind of a practical, tangible thing to rely upon. So the chart is like the map. So the sun sign being a Virgo, it helps that moon in Pisces I have. So a moon in Pisces tends towards being psychic, towards being intuitive. I've had things like premonition dreams a lot, strong hunches, strong intuitions about things. For example, my sister, she had her third boy a couple years ago. And I was driving home from Oakland, and my mind just got super quiet, and we didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but we knew that the baby was going to be born really soon. And it just hit me. I'm like, boy, this is a boy. These certain things that come, and I just kind of know about them. It's definitely not everything, but they come in sort of like these direct intuitional kind of knowings. And I also have a really strong water element in my chart as well. Lots of planets in water, and water tends more towards psychic and intuitive.
Yeah, and you're right about Virgos. My favorite people are actually Virgos. My husband's a Virgo. My best friend is a Virgo. I have a lot of people that were very, influential in my life that were Virgos. And I do really, one thing I do like about Virgos is they are very grounded. They are very kind of feet on the ground kind of people. And my husband is definitely he's not a cynic, but he's a healthy skeptic, and he can definitely, if I say, is this something or is this something, he'll be very honest and say either no or yes, I think, yeah, that's weird, definitely put on your channel, that kind of thing. So okay, so but I'm glad that you explained that, because then I do wonder if does that kind of intuitive nature, does that help in astrology?
Yeah, well, it helps because I find that the intuition is really strongly linked with the emotions and the feelings. And that helps relate to the person on a real human level. It helps me sort of bring down the barriers, because I can read the chart. And I can read the chart to the individual and say, this is square this, that equals this. I can read it like it's a math problem, or I could read it in relation to the individual and what they're going through, their challenges, their obstacles, and things they need to overcome on that hand. But I can also relate it to practical things as well, as far as like relocation charts. If someone is thinking about moving or traveling, or if someone wants a partnership in a business. Or if someone is just overall interested in their astrology chart, so I can relate it on kind of all different levels.
That's interesting, because I kind of think of it as sometimes let me ask you this. Does your intuition sometimes override the astrology, sometimes I'm thinking of as like, sometimes if I've used cards before, I because of my intuitive abilities, I know that I read the cards differently than they might someone who was just relying just on the cards would read them, I think, a completely different way. But because my intuitiveness kind of guides me and directs me, I know that if I do read cards, it's completely different. So do you find that does kind of move and guide you as you make charts, or as you look at them, or how you, like you said, maybe even feeling the person, so you think, okay, maybe this is more relevant to them, or this will make more sense to them, or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I look at the chart and take, for example, if someone has a lot of square aspects in their chart. So those are planets that are in tense relation to one another. My mind will come up with this imagery and I'll just see a lot of intensity around that specific area. And then
Mhm.
if there's something related to that, that could be like a breakthrough or something, then I'll see sort of like this energetic gateway. So I look at the astrology chart like a map.
Mhm.
It's like a cosmological, psychological map of the human psyche in relation to gifts and challenges and obstacles. Um, and then, of course, as time goes on, you become better at your craft, so you're able to understand things. You can read the chart better. You can pick things up better. So yeah, definitely a lot of intuition. Um, based upon the astrological configurations that I see and the archetypes as well. Each sign represents a specific archetype.
And do you have a preferred style in the type of astrology chart that you do, or a certain influences or anything like that?
Yeah, so I primarily do the Western astrology. And of course, the reason why is because we are in the West and the collective mindset is very much geared towards that type of astrology.
Mhm.
I talk a little bit about Vedic astrology. Sometimes I kind of bring it in there because there's some overlaps. It's sort of like sometimes when I pull some tarot cards for like a little bit of overlap. That's more for like clarity and confirmation, but definitely Western astrology is my forte.
And you talked about, before we got on, you mentioned that there was a new moon, something
Yes.
happening. So why don't you tell us about that? What did you find out
All right. So
that
it's
might help us?
so there's actually some pretty exciting energy coming up. So April 8th, which is right around the corner, we have the new moon solar eclipse in Aries. I know that's a big word. Um, a big a, a big long sentence word. Okay, so the new moon solar eclipse is really moments where we can step into fate, new beginnings, new opportunities, and new exciting endeavors. And the reason why this is so potent is because we're in this Aries energy. So Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it's all about initiation, action, independence, self-willed energy. Its mode, which is its mode of operation, is cardinal. And cardinal is all about initiating new things, initiating new ideas. And this is wonderful because it's this fire energy that's initiating new ideas in combination with a solar eclipse. The eclipses are like units of energy, concentrated units of energy. So it's just a strong energy move, a strong energy push in a forward direction. And then the North Node, which is our evolutionary direction of progression for the collective, is in Aries as well. So, that being said, the South Node, sitting opposite of the North Node, is our foundational springboard. So, our foundational springboard right now is in the sign of Libra. So, when relationships are compatible and smoothed out and harmonious, we're more able to step into that Aries energy of fearlessness, passion, independence, drive, and self-willed activity.
And so how long is this period of time lasting? What is it,
So
48 hours? Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Three? Yeah.
yeah, so that's a good question. So the moon is the swiftest moving planet in the astrology chart, and it changes every 2.5 days. So it's the moon's only full for 2.5 days. So yeah, so this is a pretty potent energetic move and shift that's going on.
And so when you say new beginnings, so if I'm thinking of trying something new or doing something new, or finally starting, starting to build a website or something like that,
Mhm.
would this would be the time to kind of push that into motion? Is that what this means?
Yes, yes. Self-willed, independence, pioneer, fearlessness, daredevil, action, initiation. These are all key words for Aries.
Okay, so that's good to know. I mean, that's good to know for people to know that if they're sitting on something and they've been sitting on it for a while,
Mhm,
it's time to put it into motion, into action. That's great. That's great to know.
mhm.
So why did you, now you kind of, I've seen you talk about kind of politics and current events. So what made you start doing politics and current events, and why do you think that astrology is a good way to tell that story? Yeah, what do you have to say about that, about why it's good to tell that story, and also what made you start to talk about politics and current events?
Sure. Well, I've always been extremely interested in astrology. It first of all, it started just to kind of help me personally, and then I noticed that I love reading charts. I love looking at maps. I love looking at numbers. Extremely Virgo. I could just nerd out on it all
Mhm.
day. Uh, and then I started reading charts with those people around me, and I was putting things together, and they're like, "Wow, that was really fascinating. You showed me something interesting in my chart, or you told me something interesting that I'd forgotten about, or you sort of brought something out." And so I noticed there was this sort of there was it was like a gateway for like some magic to happen in people's lives, because that's really what it did for me. And then I was like, wow, I could end up sharing this. And so eventually, I found a great online community, and politics seemed to be something that a lot of people were talking about. And so at first I'm like, I really don't want to gear towards that. I want to kind of stay neutral, and of course I still am neutral. However, politics is something that we can all relate to. So that being said, it's great to have on a public channel, political figures, stars, the royals, anyone in the public light. And reading their charts and reading their transit charts, it helps us kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in the personal psychology. It's so easy just to sort of look at the outer layer and the shell of things, and to blame and to point fingers and to say no, and to have likes and dislikes and to be angry. And astrology helps kind of uncover those layers, see things from a unique, deeper perspective, and just have a different way of understanding and looking at things.
Do you ever have anything, because you look at political figures and um, royal figures and things like that, do you ever have things that uh, where past lives come out in astrology?
That is a wonderful question. So, yeah, there are a couple of aspects related to past lives, and one of that is the moon sign at birth. The north and the south node being particularly related to past lives, and planets in retrograde in the birth chart as well. So, yes, there are a couple of things that do indicate past lives.
That's interesting because I,
Yes,
yeah, um,
it is very interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yep, yep.
Um, are there any, as far as political figures, um, have there been any charts that have surprised you, or that you were kind of like, I did not expect that?
Um,
Or even just that you found it in very, very interesting or very, very telling?
Okay, yeah. So there are a couple things about political figures is the majority of them have their sun sign, which represents your ego structure, and your vitality in the 10th house. The 10th house in the astrology chart is fame and fortune and the public image. They
Oh,
almost all have that. And the majority of them have some sort of strong Aquarius placement as well.
oh, interesting.
Yep. Yep. Aquarius is rules the realm of politics. And with Aquarius, you find very left wing politicians and very right wing politicians as well.
Right. They all share. Well, and another thing they all share is ego, right? They, whether it's an ego that is, inflated, or an ego that's just very self-aware, it's clear that they all have that magnitude of ego.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. That 10th house, planets in the 10th house get brought into the spotlight, get brought into the public image, and the sun is the hub of the solar system, the center of the solar system. So it's where you shine, it's where you radiate your light. And so of course we're going to see a lot of those politicians with those 10th house sun signs.
Interesting. And so, um, when it comes to something like a country, can you do a chart of a country, like the chart of the United, like, because we know the when it was born, and we know, can you do a chart of the United States or the United Kingdom, or
Yeah. So I have done the United States chart. I believe July 4th, 1776.
it was, say that again?
July 4th, 1776.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and sure enough, the United States. So the United States has a Cancer sun. All about a Cancer sun is very patriotic, and an Aquarius moon, which is very democratic and very idealistic.
Mhm.
So that's kind of that combination in a nutshell. Cancer sun, Aquarius moon, and there's also, sure enough, the planet Pluto, which represents power structures, is in a retrograde aspect, showing clearly that power was abused. And that, of course, it was kind of founded on the backs of the Native Americans, showing that there's karma around issues with with the abuse of power with a Pluto in
Right.
retrograde. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so we're still working that out.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. We're still
Yeah,
working that
for a
out.
while. Yeah.
And I have, let's see. Sandrine says USA just in its Pluto return. So what does
It,
that mean, Pluto return?
so it's when Pluto makes its full cycle all the way around the astrology chart. So Pluto is the slowest moving planet. I believe Pluto in the United States chart 1776 was at the end of Capricorn. So
Mhm.
Pluto has now made its way all the way around. Um, so if I do the math again, it's Pluto's in each sign about 22 years times 12. So it makes its return every 200 plus years. Um, so this is a pretty big deal. And then Pluto has moved into Aquarius, which is more about power to the people. Generally, overall, more kind of breaks down gender barriers, more about democracy in general. So we're kind of that's we've been ending this Pluto and Capricorn cycle, which was uh, really highlighted the patriarchy, people like Donald Trump. Um, so that's been ending, and we've been moving now into this Pluto in Aquarius. That being said, whenever we get the end of Pluto cycle, it's all about purge as well. So there's just
Mm,
a lot of real nastiness, and of course, Capricorn also rules the Devil card in tarot as well, and materialism, and the patriarchy and hierarchies, and things like CEOs making 475 times the amount of their workers, things like that. The hierarchical structures have gotten so out of bounds with the
right.
end of this Pluto and Capricorn that I almost guarantee within the next 3 to 4, 5 years, when Pluto is more into Aquarius, things are going to become a little more evened out, because that's the nature of Aquarius. is more humanitarian ideals.
Right. And we, we see these patterns in the history. We're like, oh, this is so much of right now reminds me of the Gilded Age. So when you look back at charts through history, or I don't know if you have, but if you did look at charts through history, are there the same patterns in the star charts as the things going on in history as they happened?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are similar patterns, and a lot of times, you will see those similar patterns with the generational aspects, like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because they move much more slower around the chart and they make a longer lasting impact on things.
Right, right. And I learned from another astrologer I had on. Like I think I've only had, I think you're only the second one I've ever had on, because I find it so just so foreign to me. It's just not something that I kind of can't get my mind around all of it, because there's a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
But he talked about there being, a positive and a negative with each thing that happens. With, Pluto, it can be a really kind of domineering and aggressive, but it can also be really, a thing for like standing up for yourself and having, so there's good and bad about kind of. So right now, what is the negative way in which the stars and what's going on can affect us, and what is the kind of positive? So take, for instance, the election. The negative, I'm sure, would be like maybe kind of more like aggressiveness and things like that. And maybe the positive is more people standing up for democracy or whatever. So are there some, I don't know, just some things that could be happening that could be positive or negative, depending on us, right? We're the determiners of that, right?
Yeah, so that's a
Do you
good
know what
question.
I'm asking? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it really does. And what I did actually at the beginning of the year was I kind of looked at like a brief overview of some of the major determining aspects of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, first of all, that real determining aspect is that Pluto going into Aquarius. What happens in September, for a little over a month, Pluto's going to retrograde for its final time back into Capricorn. So September could potentially be like a real desperate cry for, let's say, people like Donald Trump, let's say the Republicans, who are really trying to hold on to what is going bye-bye for the last time.
Right.
So come October, Pluto will be not so smooth sailing, but for a while in Aquarius. So it's not going back into Capricorn at all. Not at least for the next several hundred years. And so because I'm seeing Pluto fully into Aquarius, that really has me at the indication that it's not looking too good for people with their old school ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
Also, some other things that are happening now too. The planet Uranus, which is innovative technology, forward movement, forward motions, that's sitting next to the planet Jupiter right now. Jupiter expands everything that it sits next to. So this Uranian energy, this forward movement, things like AI, all of this new wave technology is really like pushing forward right now. And Uranus is all about breaking down the old structures represented by Saturn, represented by that patriarchy, and represented by Capricorn and that Pluto in Capricorn. So this is just a strong forward push and forward movement year. And then what happens in June is the planet Saturn, which represents the karma, is going retrograde. So with Saturn in retrograde, it's a bit harder to kind of go out of bounds. Saturn puts things in check. It's the law of cause and effect. And when it's that retrograde, it's like everything that you have kind of done that hasn't been in integrity kind of comes back at you. So it's a bit of a reality check that's going to be going on in June.
And we're seeing a lot. I almost feel like a lot of this stuff is on steroids. I mean, we're seeing like stuff come out, but it's just like coming out right and left. And we're seeing like things, like you said, kind of karma, old stuff coming back to haunt people right and left. It's not just like one person, it's like lots of people.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is I think spot on as far as what we're actually seeing
Uh,
on the daily.
And another thing that's really interesting too is, we've all heard of like the age of Aquarius is coming. So these ages last approximately a little over 2,100 years. So we have been at the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and I truly believe that this Pluto going into Aquarius is like finally like the true entrance into Aquarius, no longer the dawning. So it's pretty
Right.
big. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you about someone specific. Did you ever do a chart on Alexei Navalny?
No, I have not.
Okay. I
Yeah.
just wonder, because have you done one on Putin?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've done several reads on Putin. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking about Alexei Navalny because um when I would, well, this is the weirdest thing, but I haven't said this on the channel yet, but I'll just say that when I would always get the same vision of him when people would ask about him. And it was kind of him outside, kind of standing on what looked like a car and having like a megaphone or a microphone and talking to people. And there were people like cheering below him. So I always felt like, oh, he's going to be free someday. He's going to get out. And then I watched when his death happened. I turned on the computer and watched this. I think it was in Poland or somewhere, and they had his image on the side of a building, and he was holding a microphone, and it looked like he was standing on a car because there was a car below him, and I was just like, and they were all cheering, and I was like, was that the image that I was seeing? So it's very, and the reason I bring that up is because when you're looking at a chart, I'm sure that it's kind of the same. It can happen as well, where you can think that it's telling you one thing, but then when it happens, you're like, oh, it was this instead. Does that happen with? I mean, it definitely happens with psychic visions. I can tell you that for sure, because things like that have happened before, but
Yeah.
because it's all in the interpretation, right? So can it be that way with astrology, where you think you're looking at something, and then when it unfolds, you see, oh, it was this actually, or maybe it was telling me this story instead. Does that happen? Or can
Yeah.
that happen?
It can definitely happen. So I look at the astrology chart, and it's like a psychological mind map. And within that mind map are basically like an infinite number of ways things could manifest, but in the
Mhm.
same tone. For example, a square aspect, which is challenging and dynamic, that could manifest in 100 different challenging and dynamic situations.
Right,
Does that
right.
make sense? But the overall tone would be the same. Just it sounds like here the overall tone was kind of the same, but it was just in a different place.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
context was different. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah. So in that sense, yeah, definitely. Hmm.
That is so fascinating. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about um, was that I also saw that you dabble in tarot cards, that you
Oh
do
yeah.
tarot cards. And
Mhm.
so where did the tarot cards fit in your
Mhm.
psychicness? And then was it tarot cards first and then astrology, or flipped?
Yeah, so it was definitely the astrology first. So where I've where tarot helps so much is when I want a straight answer and when I need to dive directly into my subconscious or someone else's subconscious without any filters. The tarot
Hmm.
will tell me clearly.
Do,
So
do you do you read them? Do you read them by their meaning, or do you use your psychic and intuitive abilities to read the cards as well?
um I do both.
Okay,
Hmm.
so it's a combination.
Very much a
When I do tarot cards, I rarely use them, to be honest, but when I do use them, it's because I'm reading for someone I don't trust myself to be completely unbiased. So it's either for me or like my family, a close friend. I'll use tarot cards just to back up what I believe I'm getting, so that I'm not biased in any way. So it will kind of be that validation, that
Yep.
physical
Yep.
validation I can look at and see.
Yep. Clarification. Yep. I say, tarot, please clarify. And then I'll do
Yeah.
a spread. And it's a lot of times I'll do it when when I'm doing, I'll do a natal chart reading. And then I do those a lot when I'm doing transit chart readings. People have questions about the future or something that happened in the past or something about now. That's when I'll throw some tarot cards for some clarification, for direction, stuff like that.
And do you have a preference of the deck? Do you use the Rider-Waite, or do you use?
I do.
Yeah.
It's the cosmic one, so it's like they have like, it's a little more what is it? The regular Rider-Waite. I mean, it's the same deck, but it's like the cosmic one, so there's like the cosmic background.
Right. And do you read them right side up and upside down? Do you do both?
Oh yeah, yep, reverse too. Oh,
okay. Because some people don't like reverse, they like to just read them upright. I mean, but because I don't usually read reverse, but I know it gives definitely more nuance, when you can,
Oh yeah. So for example, I was thinking, me and my friend were tentatively planning this Hawaii trip, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, give me some clarification, and I put the Tower card reversed. I'm like, wow, that's like pretty intense. And if I would have picked it right side up, it literally would have been like a whole different reading.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely do reverse for sure.
And do you have this is just for my own personal wanting to know, but do you have a specific card that you are drawn to, or that you feel an affinity for, or you feel like represents you sometimes in a reading?
Well, that's a good question. So I mean, of course, everyone wants like the most fantastical cards, which are like Strength, the Lovers, the High Priestess, the Chariot. I mean, these are all, So yeah, I like the wonderful, beautiful cards.
Yeah. I like the sun. I like the sun card. I like the Fool card. I always think the Fool card makes me very like happy, and when I get that. So yeah.
Fool. Yeah, that's interesting. Being the zero, I find the Fool is like the void.
Oh.
Like, all right, it's like pure manifestation kind of with the Fool.
Right. And when I get the Fool, I always feel like it's almost like permission to take that leap, or permission to take that jump. Like I said, I don't read them like I know that all the ways that I perceive them are different, but I also feel like your guides know you, and they know how you're going to interpret what you interpret. They know, so they'll give you these these little hints and things that you'll pick up on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Fool is right. The Fool is the jump and the leap, and it's like either like, and it's so interesting because either you like jumped and you were the Fool, or like it's like that card is just. I mean, it's infinity. It's very much like the Joker card.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you use your cards do you ever use them to back up astrology, or vice versa? Or do you use them to back up your own psychic feelings about something? Are they used in validation in that way?
Yes, both. I don't use them when I'll read a natal chart, because there's no use. But as mentioned before, I read them to clarify certain things, say in a relocation chart or in a transit reading chart, which is all about people. They get readings. They're like, something happened 12 years ago, and I'm not able to move on, and it was an intense event. I need clarification around this. So I'll read the transit chart. I'll say this planet was transiting, this was happening, this was happening, this was happening. And then if I feel like they've gotten enough, then I don't need to do a card spread. But if I'm sort of feeling like I need to add something, or if something's not
Right.
clicking, or if there's not some sort of resolution, then I'll do a
Mhm.
spread.
Yeah, because I would think that, yeah, and that is usually, again, that's what the cards are great at. It's kind of just giving you just a little bit more,
They
right?
like, oh yeah, they're like the cards are like my go-tos.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's a lot of people, that is exactly what it is. And like I said, for me, it's validation, but it's also that, I like you said, maybe giving a little bit more understanding, or kind of digging in just a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, so Adam, do you have a daily spiritual practice, or is your what you do kind of your spiritual practice?
That is actually a really good question. For now, I feel like it's more of what I'm doing as far as my service. I love to play music. I play the harp. I play the hand
Oh,
pan.
wow. Mhm.
So that's a nice practice. I used to dance a lot more, at like community dances. So that was sort of like a spiritual practice as well. But yeah, this is my service right now is pretty much kind of the majority of my spiritual practice that kind of keeps me grounded. I mean, I live, I'm in Santa Cruz by the beach. I live like a pretty like mellow life.
Yeah.
Um, if I travel, I'll generally go to like Hawaii or something like that. So I try to kind of live more of that kind of lifestyle, if that
Right.
makes. I'm
It
not
does.
really
Yeah.
meditating or I'm not necessarily in meditation, or I'm not necessarily, don't really, I'm that's something that like I don't really have the concentration for, at least not right now. But my spiritual practices come out in different ways.
And it's that, to me, that makes sense, because I feel like that, um I don't mean this is going to just sound very crude the way I'm going to put this, but you really do need that heavy brain work to be able to do astrology and astrology charts. I feel like your mind has to be very busy and very involved. And meditation is the opposite. You're shutting it down and shutting, what I mean? So but that totally, makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, and by the way, Santa Cruz is one of my favorite places on earth.
Oh,
I
really?
grew up going there because I'm was born and raised in San Jose, so I
Oh,
grew up
okay.
going to Santa Cruz all the time.
Yeah.
And it is has a very, very unique energy to it. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so it's surrounded by the ocean and then the redwoods, and then
Right.
separated from like San Jose by like a bunch of mountains. And
Yeah.
so it's very much like it's its own zone. It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's its own bubble.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. And it has such an energy. As soon as I go right over into that, the or when you get right onto the main drag, you kind of come over that hill and you're on the main drag, and you
I
just
was.
feel the energy shift. It's just different. But I love it. It's one of my favorite places.
Mhm.
Um, and so for those people who are uh, intimidated by astrology, or have never tried it before, like tried getting a reading, or what do you feel astrology can offer people, and what can you say to kind of let people know that it really is something they can understand, and that will also give them a different kind of guidance?
Yeah, so astrology is fascinating because you can pretty much relate it to anybody, because anyone has an astrology chart, to any aspect of life. Astrology is so comprehensive. Take the birth chart, for example, right? It literally is like increased self-understanding, increased self-awareness. It's a tool. It's a tool for guidance. And in this world, we're sort of left, we're kind of like left to the wolves, so to speak. I mean, not really, but kind of.
Right.
Everyone, I mean, we're all born, right? And we all die. And in the meantime, like, we're all just kind of doing it. We're all just kind of making it happen.
Right.
and astrology has its history going back thousands and thousands of years. So it's very much been in the collective mindset of people, and it's evolved and changed and grown throughout history, and it continues to change, evolve, and grow. So it's like telling this cosmological story. It's a story of the basically a story of the cosmos, and it's very left brain, very right brained, and it's just it's a real tool for guidance. It's there's definitely a spiritual element as well, and there's definitely a real psychological element, and then I can also very much relate it to the practical and the mundane for specific charts as far as your work and your business and your relocation and your
Right.
travel. So it's just extremely comprehensive in what it offers and what I offer.
Do you have a favorite kind of chart that you like, that you just enjoy doing? Do you like the birth charts? Do you like the natal charts? What kind of charts do you just personally enjoy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the birth charts are always fun. Those are probably like the funnest because a lot of the other charts are kind of more relating to the practical and the mundane, which is fine. But the birth chart, it's like I can get very psychological when I talk about the birth chart.
Uh-huh.
And I can really I can just relate to people on such an amazing level. It's like people are probably friends with each other for 20 years, and they don't relate the way that that I relate with someone during a session. Or
Right.
it might take 20 years to relate with someone, because we're all so busy, and people a lot of times only have a little bit of time, um or when they communicate, they get together and do something fun, so it's this real in-depth, really wonderful exchange of conversation during a reading.
Right. Yeah. And I got um I think it was actually from Celtic Seer, who I think is, or Celtic Seer, though, who is here. But she sent me I think that was her that sent me a, a chart. I don't remember what kind of chart it was for astrology, and I could not believe how accurate it was. It was so accurate. I really was blown away. It really is a remarkable tool for people to see themselves, really, and to see, really, see themselves in a different way. But also it really points out things that you're like, wow, that is amazing. Even the way you relate to other people and things like that, it was really, really so impressive and so detailed. So I know that it is very scarily accurate sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna be totally honest. Sometimes it can be a little intense because I'll see things and I'm like, wow, this could indicate a challenge or a drama, and so I try to put it in like the most sort of, I don't want to say cushy words, but like the most sort of practical kind of diplomatic way of speaking.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
that's like any reader, right? Because things can come up where it's if I usually think if it's coming up, it's for something. So it's not like you just feel like you can just bury your head in the sand and say, well, I'm not going to say that, or I'm not going to, but like you said, it kind of puts your people skills into the forefront, because you have to figure out a way to let them know, or to say something, or to make it known, but in a way that is gentle and kind, and but also giving them a heads up.
Yeah, and that in that way, it's the same, it's in the same realm as being psychic or reading tarot, because it's all divination, and we as we are the channels, we're the tools
Right,
for for that divination.
right. Um, so what do you do, just again, for my own personal knowledge, what do you do because when you do an intuitive reading, you really need the other, or a mediumship reading, you really need the other person to be open and
Yeah.
have that energy flow, because otherwise it's like hitting a brick wall. Does it work the same with astrology readings?
100%.
Yeah.
And so what I say at the beginning of the reading is just be comfortable, take a breath, and just relate with me. I'm here, I'm your friend. The more you can open up to me, the more you're going to get out of this, because really truly, and it's interesting because it's like we're reading on a screen, right? I'm not actually with them in person, but it's almost like it doesn't matter. The energy field of that person makes 100 million% difference.
It is like night and day. It really is.
Yeah.
One time I've told this story in classes before, but I
Uh-huh.
had a person who was clearly completely skeptical of everything I was saying and everything that was going on. And so I finally just stopped the reading and I said, okay, we have 30 minutes. So for the next 30 minutes, I just want you to pretend that you believe everything I'm saying. Every single word.
Wow.
Just pretend.
Wow.
Just pretend.
Wow. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And honestly, it completely changed the energy of the reading. It was a completely different reading than it would have been had I just tried to keep beating on that wall. Because immediately the guard came down and I said, as soon as you get off the phone with me, you can say it's all garbage and you can throw it out the window if you want to, but for the next 30 minutes, just pretend. So that's how I got around it. But it really is that and I think it's just that flow that you need when you're having an exchange of energy. When you're having that exchange of any kind, you need that flow happening. And when one person's cut off, it's like, well, we may as just hang up.
and it's interesting. So the majority of the people are really open, but I do sometimes get people who are kind of closed off, and they're not. It's like you're not consciously trying to be closed off. It can be a combination of, like, maybe you've had a really busy day, or maybe you're really stressed out, or maybe you have something else really going on, or maybe you have a lot that you're concealing.
Yeah.
Don't want to be revealed. So it's all of those. Mm-hmm. It's thankfully though, it's definitely the exception as opposed to the rule.
Yeah. I find the same thing. I find that most people, when they get a reading, they really want a reading and they really want to know what you have to say. But I agree, there can be different reasons why somebody might not be so into it. It could be just a bad day.
Yeah, all have bad days. Yeah.
I mean, every reader has a bad day. Why not a client, right? So Summer has the question, how close to a soul contract is astrology?
That is a really good question. Okay, so if you look at the position of the planets and the stars, in relation to the history behind all the archetypes and everything that's been built up the past 10,000 years, astrology is a combination of myth and storytelling and science, right? So all that history behind it, makes it extremely valid. And then the time when we're born, it's like the key lock combination of all the planetary positions. So your birth chart, it's, astrologically speaking, it's huge. It's your foundation. It's your foundational blueprint.
Right.
And with that, there's gifts and there's talents and there's propensities. There's also the philosophy of, past life issues, unresolved issues. I see father issues in there. I see mother issues in there. I see, I see good karma in there. I see negative karma in there. So it's really, I mean, I don't want to say it's everything, but how close to a soul contract? I mean, it's pretty comprehensive, the astrology chart. Yes.
Right.
Pretty comprehensive.
And your channel, is it Atom Stargazing Astrology or Stargazing Astrology?
It's Atom Stargazing Astrology.
And so the stargazing, I just wondered, again, for my own personal knowledge, but I'm sure other people wonder too, were you a star and planet lover before you got into astrology? Was that always a thing that you enjoyed doing, is looking at the stars or learning about the stars or anything like that?
Oh, so that's a good question. So I never actually had one of those kaleidos.
Telescopes?
There you go. So yeah, so that's not actually something I did. I was more just I was so fascinated, first of all, with what it did to me, and then with the archetypes, and I basically was much more learning it through a love of books. Learning it through books as opposed to actually going out there and looking at the planetary positions.
Right.
Mhm.
And have you, do you have an opinion about, or has astrology told you anything about um, aliens or other life out there or anything like that? Or do you have that interest at all? Or like me, I'm kind of like, I'm okay. I'm good with still learning about this stuff.
Yeah, well,
Not ready for that yet.
So it's interesting. So the planet Neptune in astrology has a lot to do with spirituality, extrasensory perception, and can also fall under the realm of like aliens and all these other kind of types of creatures. A lot of times when it's kind of in an adverse aspect, like a square aspect. So there are aspects that in the chart that do indicate more of maybe a belief in um, aliens and those types of creatures.
Right. And
Yeah.
not to, I mean, that doesn't mean I don't think they're there. I just mean that I have my plate full right now, and uh,
Yeah.
I'll, I'll figure it out when it, gets
Yeah.
real for
Yeah.
me.
I mean, to tell you the truth, like I see astrology as something like astronomy or something
Right.
like car mechanics, or
A
it's just
science. Yeah.
yeah, and it just happens that just because it's not popular in the school system, which we know falls short of everything,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't mean
Especially
that
now.
it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, and it's interesting because in cultures like ancient Greece and these cultures which were, had different philosophies on different things, something like astrology
Mhm.
was extremely popular. However, that being said, astrology has been on an upswing.
Yeah.
It really has been, and it continues to go on an upswing as well. So that's very, very cool.
And I have one question I've got through in here because of all of the exclamation points.
Oh, the notes?
Can you
Sure.
please explain what the nodes mean?
Yeah. So we have the north node and we have the south node. They're sitting opposed to each other in the astrology chart. The
Uh-huh.
north stands for like our north star. It's our evolutionary direction of movement as we go throughout life. It indicates our uncharted territory.
Okay.
Opposite of that, complete opposite, is our south node. That's our comfort zone. The south node is the tools and the gifts that we already have ready at hand. It's our tool belt. But when we stay in that position, a lot of times there's a stagnancy. So there's an evolutionary push towards the north node as we go throughout life, which is the realm of the uncharted territory
Right.
for our soul growth.
Very, yeah, that I'm glad you explained that, because that's a very clear explanation. I think that's really good. So thank you so much for coming on, especially on Easter Sunday. I really appreciate you just coming in and doing it. And where can people find you? I put your channel in the description, but where can people find you?
Yes. So for everyone there, I'm currently offering discounted astrological readings across the board.
Oh,
So if
nice.
you're interested in a natal chart, or if you're interested in if you're at any types of crossroads in your life, if you're interested in a relocation chart, any types of those charts I'm doing. So my email is the best way to get a hold of me, and that's Adam Astro. That's ADAMASTRO 777 at gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll add that to the description so people can just click on it and find you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Adam, so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming out and hanging out with us. And I hope you will look Adam up and watch his channel. And there's a lot of politics and things like that you've been doing. And so it's all just fascinating, I think. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well if you have not subscribed.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, definitely subscribe. And it's always fun to find a new channel and subscribe to it, especially when you're kind of on the ground floor and they're just kind of getting going. It's really a lot of fun. So yeah, and it's free. You know, I always think it's you know, what in this life is free? Not many things. You can still subscribe to stuff for free on YouTube. So that's nice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Adam. And everybody have a happy Easter. Bye.